That said, for the longest time, the Mon Calamari and the Quarren weren't aware of each other, which isn't odd given how far apart their two aquatic worlds were. That changed around 4,775 years before the Battle of Yavin, when a Quarren hunting party came across a team of Mon Calamari divers who were out exploring the depths of the oceans. The two species could have come together to make the most of both worlds, shallow seas and dark depths, but predictably, given what we've said about the Quarren and their xenophobia, it was the start of a war. Wary of the divers, the Quarren hunting party attacked, and that small instigation led to both species being up in arms. The Mon Calamari were appalled at the unprovoked attack and immediately jumped to the conclusion that their neighbours were savages. The Quarren, on the other hand, believed the diving party had been a group of scouts preparing the way for a Mon Calamari incursion into their territory. As is too often the case, that fear was what drove their next course of action, and the Quarren declared war. For more than 2 centuries, the Quarren-Mon Calamari War ravaged the entire planet. Defying their enemies' expectations, the Quarren proved themselves to be far more skilled in the ways of war, and with their aggressive, ferocious attacks, they frequently took the Mon Calamari by surprise, dealing heavy casualties. On the other hand, the Mon Calamari had far superior technology, which gave them the advantage in the long run. By 4,500 BBY, they had won the war. Following their humiliating defeat, the Quarren began rebuilding from the long, drawn-out war. But they didn't do so with peace in mind. Many Quarren leaders were already thinking ahead to a counterattack. They were a proud people, and a defeat like that wasn't something they were willing to let slide. Seeing these preparations, the Mon Calamari were rightfully concerned. They believed a second war would lead to the extinction of the Quarren, which they saw as senseless and unnecessary. So in order to prevent a second war, the Mon Calamari did what any sane and reasonable species would do. They kidnapped thousands of Quarren younglings, then raised them alongside young Mon Calamari, putting them through their education system, exposing them to their culture, and so on. Once these kidnappees were older, they sent them back to the depths, where they would hopefully use their Mon Calamari-infused virtues to elevate Quarren society. As you might imagine, this stunt didn't go down well with the Quarren. When the kidnapped Quarren returned to the depths, they were seen as little more than brainwashed puppets, not to be trusted. The kidnappees, on the other hand, saw the older Quarren as uncultured savages. Predictably, this led to some societal tensions, at least until the older ones died out and the Mon Calamari raised young inherited the reins of society. Now that they were free to act on their beliefs, they established relations with the Mon Calamari, and finally, the two species could live in harmony. Against all odds, the Mon Calamari plan had worked. Together, the two peoples developed space travel technology as well as their own hyperdrive technology, which they used to colonize other star systems. But this peace and cooperation didn't last forever. Over the next few centuries, the Quarren began to grow ever more distrustful of their neighbors once more, and with good reason. The partnership they had built was heavily skewed in the Mon Calamari's favor. It was the Mon Calamari who held most positions in government. It was the Mon Calamari who played artists and philosophers, while the Quarren did manual labor. Basking in their warm, safe, light-filled cities in the shallows, the Mon Calamari dreamed big, while the Quarren toiled away in the cold, dark depths, mining minerals to fuel their supposedly mutually beneficial society. You'll remember we mentioned the two species began colonizing nearby star systems. What would have been more accurate is, the Mon Calamari began colonizing nearby star systems, with occasional Quarren manual laborers brought along to keep that nice segregation going. That said, the Quarren did establish a few colonies of their own, such as on Mintuine. Where the Mon Calamari got the inhabited worlds with new species they could make friends with, the Quarren got uninhabited worlds they had to work from scratch. As you can imagine, the horde of inequalities slowly led to resentment brewing over time. In 4166 BBY, the Republic reached Duck's sector of wild space, but the planet didn't join galactic society for another few hundred years. This was due to its own internal instability, which made the Mon Calamari residents wary of the Republic's own instability, which they thought might accelerate their own deterioration. The Quarren, of course, were as xenophobic as ever and wanted nothing to do with the Republic. Naturally, they were ignored, and after a few centuries after Dak was first discovered, the Mon Calamari had them join the Galactic Republic, and their little corner of space became known as the Calamari Sector. Given everything we've covered about how much the Quarren were pushed aside and mistreated, it's fairly surprising that peace lasted as long as it did. Tensions were high for millennia, but things seemed to hold until the Separatist crisis began just before the Clone Wars. Hoping to prevent the tension from exploding into a straight-up war, the Mon Calamari finally allowed a Quarren to serve as their sector's Senate representatives in the decades leading up to the Separatist crisis. This didn't go very well for them, however. When the Separatist crisis began, the Quarren senator, Tikes, became corrupt and made deals with Thalassian slavers for them to pillage the outer colonies of the Calamari sector. When his dealings were discovered, he fled the Senate Tower and announced the Calamari sector's secession from the Republic. From then on, he declared, Calamari space would be part of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Understandably, Dak exploded into chaos at their esteemed senator's proclamation. The Mon Calamari, on their part, were heavily loyalist, and they quickly declared Tikes' decision as invalid. It hadn't passed any governmental approval, and they claimed the senator couldn't make such decisions alone. Even some Quarren politicians, such as replacement Senator Tundra Dalmea, agreed with the Mon Calamari. However, the vast majority of Quarren supported Tikes despite all the corruption that had come to light. Call it spite toward their loyalist neighbours who had driven them deeper into the darkness, or spiteful hope that the CIS would reward them and help them prosper, but the Quarren were almost unanimous in their support of seceding. Tikes founded the Quarren Isolation League and the Free Dak movement, both of which advocated for the secession of the Calamari sector and the dissolution of the joint Quarren-Mon Calamari government. Essentially, he wanted the Quarren to become fully independent once more and lead the way into a new separatist future. Within a few short years, the Clone Wars began, and within its framework, the conflict on Dak escalated. As with many other planets, the loyalist and separatist elements on Dak escalated into open warfare. The Quarren Isolation League, supported by the CIS's droid army, began a war with the Republic-backed Mon Calamari. 2 battles resulted from this reignited war. During the first one, the Quarren Isolation League was defeated and driven off-world, but this didn't fully root out separatist sentiment in the deeps. Later in the war, this lingering sentiment led to a second battle following the assassination of the Mon Calamari king. You'll remember this battle from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. During the battle, the Quarren were nearly victorious, but in their hour of victory, their so-called separatist allies turned on them. This led the Quarren to turn their backs on the separatist movement and ally with the Mon Calamari to drive the droid army off Dak once and for all. Even with this uneasy alliance, many Quarren were still resentful toward their neighbours. Many still supported former Senator Tikes and his government in exile. Some Quarren, including powerful chieftains such as Nosor Ri, supported the Mon Calamari king Li Cha, hoping it would lead to more equality in their shared society, but things changed little as everything settled. The Quarren were still second-class citizens on their own planet, with a hefty chip on their shoulder toward their snooty, self-important neighbours. Even without open war between the two, conflict still ignited here and there between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari out in their colonies. While the Mon Calamari colonies were firmly members of the Galactic Republic, the Quarren colonies joined the CIS. The Quarren Isolation League and Free Dak movement both retreated to these colonies, where they became key figures in the CIS war effort. Even after the war ended, tensions persisted, which ended up proving disastrous for the whole planet. Early in the Imperial era, Imperial forces under Grand Moff Tarkin attacked Dak, planning to retaliate for Dak's representatives supporting the petition of the 2000 by enslaving the Mon Calamari. Had the Mon Calamari and Quarren worked together, they might have managed to drive the Imperials off, but instead, a Quarren named Segor Tells, a former member of the Quarren Isolation League, sabotaged Dak's planetary shields out of bitterness against the Mon Calamari. As a result, Dak was conquered, and both the Mon Calamari and Quarren were enslaved. Overall, we have to say that the mess on Dak was born out of societal inequality and millennia of unfair treatment. Even if the Clone Wars does its best to frame the Mon Calamari as the victims of Quarren aggression, it's more than evident that the Quarren are the true victims in this situation, pushed into aggression by thousands of years of mistreatment.